At my engagement party, my future mother-in-law smirked, "We did a background check on you. And we know everything." My fiance went pale, but I just smiled and said, "That's funny, because I did one too, and you won't like what I found." The night of my engagement party was supposed to be perfect. It was held in an upscale event space in Charleston, South Carolina, a grand, historic building with high ceilings, chandeliers that cast a warm glow, and the faint sound of a string quartet playing in the background. Guests were dressed in elegant evening attire, champagne flowed freely, and laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses. It was everything I had imagined it would be. But as I would soon learn, perfection is a fragile thing. I stood beside my fiancé, Ryan Mercer, watching as our friends and family gathered to celebrate our upcoming wedding. His hand rested gently on my lower back, a comforting presence, his fingers brushing against the fabric of my dress every now and then. I had always loved that about him, his need for small, constant reassurances, the way he reached for me as if to confirm that I was really there. Ryan had always been the kind of man who seemed completely unaware of his own charm. He had that quiet confidence, the kind that came from growing up in a wealthy family but never feeling the need to flaunt it. His brown hair was neatly styled, his suit tailored to perfection, and his blue eyes, so often filled with warmth, were now flickering between me and his mother, who had just leaned in close enough for only us to hear. "We did a background check on you," Eleanor Mercer murmured, her lips barely moving, as though sharing a secret. Her voice was smooth, pleasant, but there was an undeniable sharpness beneath it. "And we know everything." For a brief moment, the world around me blurred. The music, the conversations, the sound of heels clicking against the marble floor, it all faded. Ryan stiffened beside me. His fingers, which had been warm in mine just seconds ago, turned cold. His face was unreadable, but I could feel the way his entire body tensed. Eleanor's smile was small and satisfied, as if she had just laid down a winning card in a game she had already decided. She would win. I met her gaze and, despite the slow-burning anger bubbling in my chest, I smiled. "That's funny," I said calmly, tilting my head slightly, "because I did one too, and you won't like what I found." Her expression faltered. It was barely perceptible, just a flicker in her carefully composed features, but I saw it. Ryan turned to me then, confusion etched into his face. "What?" His voice was low, uncertain. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a sip of my champagne, allowing the moment to stretch. The weight of Eleanor's words settled over us like an invisible cloud, suffocating and heavy. I should have expected something like this. I had known from the beginning that Eleanor Mercer didn't approve of me. She never said it outright, she was far too polished for that, but I saw it in the way she measured her words whenever she spoke to me, in the way she never truly engaged in conversation but rather observed, as though studying a problem she was trying to solve. The Mercers were old money. Generations of wealth, deeply rooted in Charleston society, the kind of people whose names carried weight. And then there was me, Delilah Brooks. A woman with no famous last name, no family fortune. I ran my own business restoring historic homes, a job I loved, but one that hardly compared to the prestige of Ryan's world. For 2 years, Eleanor had played the part of the polite, distant mother. But now, at my own engagement party, she had decided to make her move. She wanted to see me unravel. I glanced at Ryan, who was still looking at me, waiting, needing me to explain. Eleanor beat me to it. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, feigning sympathy, "you don't have to pretend. Ryan deserves to know the truth." "Then let's tell him," I said simply, setting my champagne down. A few nearby guests had started paying attention. The way Eleanor spoke, the deliberate way she was dragging this out, was meant to create a scene. She wanted people to hear. She turned slightly, ensuring that those within earshot would catch her next words. "Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that our dear Delilah was once married?" There was a pause, just long enough for the words to settle, for them to take effect. A few murmurs rippled through the room. Ryan's head snapped toward me. "What?" I exhaled slowly. "Yes," I admitted. "I was married. When I was 24. It lasted a year." Eleanor folded her arms, clearly pleased with herself. "It ended badly, didn't it?" I clenched my jaw. "Yes." She turned slightly, addressing the growing number of onlookers. Her ex-husband, Jason Holt, was a criminal. A liar. A con man. Her eyes flicked back to mine. "Did you ever plan on telling my son that you were married to a convicted felon?" More whispers. Someone gasped. Ryan took a step back, his face pale. "Delilah, I left him the moment I found out," I cut in, my voice steady. "I testified against him in court. I have spent years rebuilding my life." Eleanor scoffed, shaking her head as if disappointed. And yet you didn't think my son had the right to know? I met Ryan's gaze, my voice softer now. I didn't tell you because it wasn't relevant. It was years ago. It had nothing to do with us. Ryan swallowed hard. But, Eleanor wasn't done. Secrets, Delilah. That's what this is about. And if you can hide something like that, what else aren't you telling us? I held her gaze for a long moment before I finally spoke. Like I said, Eleanor, I did my own background check. The color drained from her face. I turned to Ryan, pulling out the manila envelope I had tucked into my clutch earlier that evening. Your mother has been married 3 times. Her second husband, Stephen Reynolds? My voice was calm, but I saw the way Eleanor's fingers twitched. The one who died? I turned back to Eleanor. He didn't just die, did he? Silence. Ryan's eyes darted between us. What are you talking about? I pulled out a document. This is a police report from 1987. Stephen Reynolds drowned in a boating accident. But what's interesting is that Eleanor was the sole beneficiary of a $2 million life insurance policy taken out just months before his death. Ryan's breath hitched. He turned to his mother. Mom? Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. That's ridiculous. I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe that's why you've been so obsessed with my past. Because you know that if I start digging, I'll find things you don't want people to know. For the first time that night, Eleanor looked rattled. Ryan took another step back. His face was unreadable. The guests were still watching, silent now, waiting. Eleanor opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. And then, someone dropped a champagne glass. The sound of glass shattering against the marble floor cut through the silence like a gunshot. A few heads turned, but no one moved to clean it up. The tension in the room had settled in like thick, humid Charleston air before a storm, heavy, suffocating. Charged with something electric. Eleanor stood motionless, her fingers curling slightly at her sides, her nails pressing into her palm hard enough to turn her knuckles white. Her carefully applied makeup, her perfectly arranged pearl necklace, her pristine posture, none of it could hide the way her composure had begun to crack. Ryan was still staring at me, his mouth slightly open, as if trying to form words that wouldn't come. His blue eyes, which had always been so steady, so full of certainty, were now filled with something else entirely, doubt, confusion, something just shy of betrayal. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on me, watching, waiting, dissecting. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. It was supposed to be a celebration. An engagement party. A night where I stood beside the man I loved, surrounded by friends and family, planning our future together. Instead, I was standing in the middle of a grand ballroom, exposing secrets I hadn't planned on revealing, facing off against a woman who had just tried to tear me apart. And now, she was the one struggling to breathe. I let the silence stretch. Let her feel what it was like to be under the microscope, to have her past dragged into the light with no warning, no time to prepare, no way to control the narrative. She had assumed I wouldn't fight back. That I'd be too humiliated, too blindsided, too weak. But she had underestimated me. She always had. Ryan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom. Is this true? His words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Eleanor blinked. Just once. And then, as if the question hadn't been asked at all, she let out a soft, breathy laugh. It was calculated, practiced, the kind of laugh a woman like her had perfected over decades of deflecting, manipulating, controlling. She reached for her champagne glass and took a slow sip, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapping around the delicate stem. When she finally set it down, she tilted her head slightly, studying me as if I were something foreign, something she hadn't quite figured out yet. Then, in that smooth, composed voice of hers, she said, "Oh, darling. Is this the best you could come up with?" The words were meant to be dismissive, to turn the tables, to make me look like a desperate one. But I saw it now, the slightest tremble in her fingers, the tightness around her mouth, the way she glanced at Ryan before quickly looking away. She was rattled. Good. I held up the police report. You never answered the question. Eleanor smiled, slow and deliberate, as if I had just told a charming little joke. I don't need to dignify such nonsense with an answer. Ryan shifted beside me. He was still holding his champagne glass, but his grip was so tight I thought the stem might snap. Nonsense, I repeated. That's interesting. Because I found more than just this. Her smile faltered, just for a second. A flicker of something passed over her face, annoyance, maybe even fear, but then it was gone, replaced with that same cold, controlled expression. I reached into the envelope and pulled out another document, this one thicker, bound together with a paperclip. Do you recognize this? I asked, holding it up. She didn't respond. So I continued. It's a financial report. From an independent investigator. It details a number of questionable transactions, all linked to your name. Ryan turned his head sharply. What? Eleanor's jaw tensed. I don't know what you think you've found, but I assure you, you are sorely mistaken. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. I don't think I'm mistaken at all. In fact, I think I'm finally seeing things clearly. I turned to Ryan then, meeting his gaze. You should look at this. I handed him the document. He hesitated. Eleanor's voice came quickly, sharp and commanding. Ryan. It was the first crack in her carefully controlled demeanor. He looked at her. His mother. The woman who had raised him, shaped him, taught him how to navigate the world. He had always trusted her. Respected her. Loved her. But now? Now there was something else in his eyes. Doubt. Suspicion. Something neither of us had ever expected to see there. I could see him fighting it, clinging to the belief that his mother couldn't possibly be capable of something like this. But I had just handed him proof. He swallowed hard and, finally, reluctantly, took the document from my hands. The room was still painfully silent. All eyes were on him now. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he exhaled sharply and looked up at his mother. His face had changed. His eyes were no longer filled with love or trust. Just disbelief. Betrayal. Mom. His voice cracked. What did you do? Eleanor's smile was gone now. For the first time that night, she looked unsettled. Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for a way out, an escape, someone to back her up. But no one spoke. No one moved. I could feel it in the air, the shift. The realization. The way the power had subtly, but undeniably, changed hands. She had come here tonight to destroy me. But now? Now, she was the one unraveling. The shift in the room was undeniable. Eleanor Mercer, the woman who had always been in control, who had dictated the social circles of Charleston's elite for decades, was now standing on unsteady ground. Her mask had slipped, and everyone could see the cracks. Ryan was still staring at the papers in his hands, his expression dark and unreadable. He looked as if the floor beneath him had just disappeared, like he was grasping for something solid but finding only empty air. His mother, the woman he had trusted implicitly, had just been unmasked in front of everyone who mattered. Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it again, and then finally said, her voice still eerily calm, Ryan, sweetheart, you're not actually listening to this nonsense, are you? Her voice was softer now, coaxing, the voice of a mother soothing a child who had been frightened by a nightmare. She was trying to pull him back in, trying to regain control. Ryan's jaw tightened. Is it nonsense? His voice was quiet, but the weight of his words was crushing. Her eyes flickered with something sharp, panic. Anger, something dangerous. She took a slow breath, straightening her shoulders as if physically willing herself back into power. This is a mistake, she said, her voice regaining some of its steel. These documents mean nothing. You know people will say anything for money. I have enemies, Ryan. Our family has enemies. This is exactly the kind of thing they would fabricate to ruin us. Ryan said nothing. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, he turned the page, scanning more of the report. I saw the exact moment when the last of his doubt shattered. His hands tightened around the papers, knuckles turning white, and when he finally looked up, his expression was colder than I had ever seen it. This is real, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor took a step toward him. Ryan, I don't. He pulled back, just slightly, but it was enough. Enough to tell her that whatever control she had over him was slipping fast. She saw it too. And for the first time, she looked truly afraid. I had spent months digging into Eleanor's past after I first got the sense that she was trying to bury mine. It started with curiosity, then with caution. And then, the deeper I went, the more I realized that the real threat in this family wasn't me. It had never been me. It was her. The Mercer name carried weight in Charleston, but behind the polished family image were secrets that had been swept under fine Persian rugs for generations. Eleanor had been at the center of it all, her second husband's suspicious drowning, the sudden disappearance of a former business associate, the shell companies funneling money into private offshore accounts. She wasn't just a controlling socialite. She was a predator. And now, finally, she was exposed. I glanced around the room, seeing how the guests had begun to murmur among themselves. These were people who had spent years admiring Eleanor, who had been part of her carefully curated world of privilege and exclusivity. But tonight, they were seeing something different. They were seeing her fall. And no one, not a single person, was stepping in to save her. Eleanor turned back to me, her eyes dark with something venomous. "You think you've won," she said quietly. "You think you can waltz in here and tear this family apart?" I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough so that only she could hear me. "No, Eleanor. You tore this family apart." I just held up a mirror. She let out a slow breath, her mask slipping completely now, revealing the raw fury beneath. She had spent her entire life wielding power, controlling narratives, making and breaking people with a single word. But tonight, for the first time, she had lost control. And she knew it. Ryan let out a shaky exhale and turned to me. His eyes, still stormy with emotion, softened just slightly. "Let's go," he murmured. I nodded. Without another glance at Eleanor, I reached for his hand, feeling the warmth of his fingers wrap around mine. And then, with the weight of 100 stairs pressing against our backs, we walked out of that room. We left Eleanor Mercer standing in the wreckage of the life she had built on lies. We left her to face the whispers, the scandal, the inevitable fallout. We left her exactly the way she had planned to leave me.
الغنوة اللي جاية دي حضراتكم هقولوها معايا، يعني انتوا رغبتكم، بس انتوا اول ما هتسمعوها هتعرفوا. انما انا عايز اقول لكم هي كلمات مين؟ هي كلمات الدكتور مدحت العدل والحان خالد حماد وتوزيعه برضه. هنغنيها اول ما تسمعوا الدخول، هتغنوا معانا على طول.